Welcome to Newshour. The United States has removed millions of dollars in bounties from senior members of the Haqqani network in Afghanistan, a key part of the Taliban government. Well, the move comes within days of US officials meeting with the government in Kabul to secure the release of an American tourist detained since 2022. Mitch McCann reports now from New York.
Guy, the United States had offered $20 million for information about 3 leaders of the Haqqani network, reportedly the only wing of the Taliban to be classified by the US as a foreign terrorist organisation. However, after US envoy Adam Bowler visited the region, the bounties were removed on the 3 men, including the 2 Haqqani brothers, Sirajuddin and Abdulaziz Haqqani, and their cousin Yahya Haqqani, according to multiple reports. Now, in recent days, 66-year-old American aircraft mechanic George Glesman was also released after 2 years in Afghanistan, something that the Taliban called a gesture of goodwill. The Taliban's Ministry of Interior Affairs, when referring to the Taliban, said this is a major achievement for the Islamic Emirate. It also signals perhaps a change in approach from the United States toward the Taliban, and something experts will be keeping a very close eye on in the coming months. Now, it's significant for many reasons, including the fact that the Haqqani network is accused of carrying out multiple high-profile and deadly attacks in Afghanistan during the US-led war in the country. Following the Taliban takeover after the US withdrawal in 2021, as the New York Times puts it, the US led the charge in isolating their government and promised that no sanctions would be lifted until a number of policies in Afghanistan were reversed. Mr. Trump, too, continued with a similar approach, demanding billions of dollars of American military hardware be returned to the US, and he threatened to cut off all financial aid to the country if that failed to happen. Now, one Taliban spokesperson said that the recent developments in Afghanistan, US relations, are a good example of the pragmatic and realistic engagement between the 2 governments. Now, it's still unclear what this latest deal means for relations between the US and Taliban leaders in Afghanistan, and it may be too soon to suggest that Americans are open to legitimizing parts of the country's government, as no country officially recognizes the Taliban as the lawful authorities in Afghanistan, and the US hasn't made any official comment to support a significant change in policy. Mitch McCann for A News in New York.
Well, let's travel 11,000 kilometres to the east now and get the perspective from the other side. Our Kabul correspondent Tamim Bahis has the latest from Afghanistan's capital.
Well, here in Kabul, there has been a cautious but positive reaction to the news that the United States has officially removed a $10 million bounty on Sirajuddin Haqqani, a senior Taliban leader and head of the Haqqani network, who currently serves as the acting interior minister in Afghanistan's de facto government. Additionally, rewards for 2 other Haqqani members, Hafiz Abdulaziz and Yahya Haqqani, both of whom have been subject to $5 million bounties, have also been lifted. This development comes just days after a US delegation led by Adam Bowler visited Kabul to negotiate the release of George Glesman, an American who had been held by the Taliban for 2.5 years. The Taliban released Glesman on humanitarian grounds in what they called a goodwill gesture. However, it remains unclear if the removal of these bounties was part of these negotiations. The Haqqani network was once considered one of the deadliest factions within the Taliban, particularly following the 2001 US-led invasion of Afghanistan. A US State Department spokesperson has confirmed that there are no longer any active rewards for information on the Haqqanis. Adam Bowler's recent visit marked the first time senior US officials have met with the Taliban inside Afghanistan since the group's return to power in 2021. Previous engagements had taken place in Qatar and the UAE. The visit, the release of George Glesman, and now the removal of the bounties on key Taliban figures are seen as a significant development in the US-Taliban relations. Speaking to A News, Taliban officials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed the group's desire for improved relation with Washington. However, key points of contention remain, among them the issue of US weapons left behind in Afghanistan. President Donald Trump has demanded that these weapons be returned, but the Taliban has refused. This is Tamim Bahiz for A News in Kabul.
Well, this shift in approach then brings with it some optimism, but also raises plenty of questions, not just about the future of Afghanistan, but what the future of diplomacy might look like in our increasingly multipolar and hard to predict world. Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Andy Preston, a political commentator from the UK. Mr. Preston, thank you very much for joining us on A News.
Hello, Guy. Hi, everyone.
Let's start by talking about bounties. Now, I think a lot of people might be shocked to know that in 2025, in our ultra-sophisticated, ultra-modern world, governments are still relying to some degree on the diplomatic tools used in cowboy and pirate movies. How widespread is this ecosystem of bounties and bounty hunters?
Hi, Guy. That's a really good point. First of all, this is an ancient technique. I'm sure it was around long before the cowboys and others existed. What this does is it allows people to try and live in a safer world, and without wishing to justify it in any way, I think that it allows countries to gain intel to eliminate dangerous people. The world is an incredibly dangerous place. Human nature hasn't changed, and we're as much threat as communities as we ever were. So the ability to remove or gain information on an Osama bin Laden or gain intelligence on a hostile government is extraordinarily valuable. The USA broadcasts its bounties as a way of spreading the word, undermining its foes, and it's obviously changing its policies at the moment on an ad hoc basis. I'm certain, and others are too, that many European and other Western nations are doing this, but don't publicise it as freely.
Do you think, though, I mean, there's been a lot of concern recently about the fear of the demise of the multilateral world and the replacement of that with what people are terming more of a multipolar world. Do you think that placing a financial reward on the head of a country or a senior individual within a government, do you think that risks undermining the rule of law, diplomatic norms? Yes,
I think it does. And I think, to be honest, it's usually meant to. It's usually meant to undermine, to alienate a government, and to make the people who live in a foreign place where they have a person that, say, the USA wants to have removed, it sends them a really clear message as to where their country is, national standing. So it is dangerous. It's actually, I have to say, it's reliable, because bounties on people and payment for information often brings very bad information and misleading leads that can send people down a rabbit hole. But if, say, Osama bin Laden, the US acted there with a huge reward. You or I will never know how much reward played in tracking him down over those years. But I think that it's a useful tool. It's not something that I would personally endorse wholeheartedly, but nor would I endorse many acts of defence, including war. So this is probably best to be seen of defence by a country against hostile and dangerous agents.
Very interesting. Yeah, let's look at the situation between the US and Afghanistan and explore some of the politics of this. President Trump's approach to international relations has definitely attracted lots of criticism. But when we look at this most recent situation, the release of Mr. Glesman, the goodwill that has been reported, the dropping of the bounty, is there a sense in which the Trumpian obsession with deal-making instead of ideology at times can actually create peace and prosperity?
You know what? Deal-making absolutely can bring results. But what I have to say is that deal-making of this kind brings very good short-term results. Trump is a transactor, right? He's a transactionalist. He wants to exchange one thing in return for something else. And that categorically does work, and we can see that. But medium and long term, it alienates your allies. And without an ally, you are just a lone deal maker in a big and dangerous world. We all need allies of similar mindsets and similar objectives. So I would suggest really clearly that Trump will get results in the short term, but he will hinder the USA's medium and long-term prospects for peace and prosperity.
Very interesting indeed. Mr. Preston, thank you very much indeed for your analysis and for joining us on Newshour.
Thank you.
Well, that is all we have time for on this edition of Newshour. Please do check out anews.tv for all the very latest news and analysis. And from all of us here in Baku, thank you for watching.